Hey everyone, welcome back to Product Mastery in the Age of AI and ChatGPT. I'm Madhumita. Quick scenario before we start. Imagine you wake up, try to buy your morning coffee, and the payment just fails. No warning, no explanation, you didn't do anything wrong. Somewhere, an algorithm looked at your transaction, decided you looked risky, and shut the door. No human ever saw your case. No human ever will unless you fight for it. That's not a hypothetical anymore. That's Tuesday for millions of people in systems where AI agents now make the fraud call end to end. Today, we are not talking about how to build a better fraud model. We are talking about something PMs almost never get trained to ask: who gets to decide when a machine says no to a human, and whose problem are we actually solving when we automate that decision? This is a product thinking episode disguised as an ethics episode. Stay with me. Let's start with the problem space because that's always where I start. Most AI features live in a world of soft failure. Your recommendation engine suggests the wrong movie, mildly annoying, no real damage. Your writing assistant gives you an awkward sentence, you fix it, you move on. Fraud decisioning does not live in that world. It lives in a world of hard failure with two very different flavors. And here's the trap most product teams fall into: they optimize for only one of them. Flavor 1, the agent says yes to something that's actually fraud. That's a loss you can put a number on. Finance teams hate this. It shows up on a dashboard and it gets fixed fast because it's visible. Flavor 2, the agent says no to something that was actually legitimate. A real person doing a real thing gets blocked, delayed, or locked out. This failure is almost invisible in your metrics. The person doesn't file a bug report, they just quietly leave, or worse, they can't leave because it's their rent payment, their medical bill, their only account. Here's the uncomfortable part: when you let an autonomous agent make this call instead of a human, you're not removing bias or inconsistency, you're just moving where the error shows up. And usually you're moving it onto the group with the least power to complain. So, before we talk about any AI agent architecture, the first product question has to be: which of these two failures does our business currently reward us for minimizing, and which one are we quietly asking a machine to absorb on our behalf? That's not a technical question, that's a problem space question, and most teams skip it entirely and jump straight to let's fine tune the model. Let's go deeper into product thinking because add a fraud agent is a feature, it is not a product decision. Here's an exercise I do with teams. I ask them to describe the job the customer is hiring the fraud system to do, not the company, the customer. And almost every team gives me the same wrong answer. The customer wants to be protected from fraud. That's half true, and the boring half. The fuller job is this: when something unusual happens with my money or my access, I want to be treated as innocent until proven otherwise, and I want a fast, fair way to prove it if I'm wrong. Notice what changed. It's no longer just a detection job, it's a dignity job and a recovery job. And once you see it that way, you realize most fraud agents are only designed to solve the first third of that job, catch the bad thing, and completely ignore the other two thirds. Preserving dignity in the moment of being flagged and giving a fast path back. Let me give you a hypothetical: no real company, no real numbers, just the shape of it. Picture a mid sized digital bank. They roll out a fully autonomous fraud agent that can freeze an account in real time, no human review needed, decision made in under a second. Leadership is thrilled, fraud losses drop noticeably in the first month, everyone claps. 3 months later, support tickets on a completely different topic, why can't I access my own money, quietly become one of the top drivers of App Store complaints. Nobody connected the two because the fraud team owns a losses avoided metric and the support team owns a ticket volume metric, and nobody owns how does it feel to be a false positive. That's the product thinking gap. A feature ships, a product problem doesn't get solved. And the reason is simple, nobody defined the job beyond detection. Here's your reframe for this week. Anytime you evaluate an agentic decision system, write the job statement in three parts: protect me, treat me fairly in the moment, get me back quickly if you're wrong. If your roadmap only has line items for part one, you don't have a fraud product, you have a fraud filter with a PR problem waiting to happen. Now let's talk segmentation because this is where the real unlock is, and it's the part almost every team gets embarrassingly wrong. When teams segment users for a fraud system, they almost always segment by risk score. Low risk, medium risk, high risk. That's a model output, not a customer segment. It tells you nothing about motivation, behavior, or the job to be done. It's the equivalent of segmenting your whole customer base by spends a lot versus spends a little and calling it a day. Let me give you a behavior and motivation based segmentation instead, the kind that actually reveals underserved needs. Segment 1, the predictable regular, same patterns every month, low anxiety, barely notices the fraud system exists because it never touches them. This segment is already well served. Most roadmaps are built for them by accident because they're the easy majority. Segment 2, the legitimate outlier. This is someone whose real life doesn't match their historical pattern. They're traveling, they just got a new job and a new pay schedule. They're buying something big and unusual for a totally honest reason. Their motivation is normal life, their behavior looks like risk. This segment gets caught constantly, and almost no fraud product is designed with them in mind because they're a minority of transactions but a majority of complaints. Segment 3, the vulnerable flag. Someone going through something like a divorce, a caregiving situation, a sudden relocation, their financial behavior genuinely changes overnight for reasons that have nothing to do with fraud. When an autonomous agent locks them out with zero context and zero human judgment, the cost isn't inconvenience, it's real harm at a fragile moment. This is almost always the most underserved and least discussed segment in any fraud roadmap. Segment 4, the adaptive bad actor. This is actual fraud but sophisticated, learning the system's blind spots over time. Ironically, this is the only segment most fraud roadmaps are obsessively designed around because it's the one with a clean, visible cost. Here's the underserved gap stated plainly. Your roadmap is fully built for segment 4, partially built for segment 1, and almost completely empty for segments 2 and 3, the exact segments where letting a fully autonomous agent make the call with no human escalation path does the most quiet damage. That's your product opportunity, not build a better model. Build a better path for the legitimate outlier and the vulnerable flag, faster human escalation, context aware second chances, recovery designed with the same care as detection. Okay, let's make this practical. Here's exactly how you run this analysis yourself this week. using any ChatGPT or Bard type tool you already have access to. Step 1. Open a fresh chat and ask it to help you write the full job to be done statement for your decision system, not just the primary job. Prompt it something like, help me expand this feature's job to be done beyond its primary function into the surrounding emotional and recovery jobs the customer also needs solved. Push back on the first answer it gives you. It will usually only give you the primary job. Ask it, what job is being ignored here? Step 2. Paste in a plain description of how your system currently makes decisions. No confidential data, just the shape of the logic. Ask the tool to list out behavior and motivation based user segments. Who would experience this differently, explicitly instructing it to avoid risk score based segments? Ask for at least one segment that would be invisible in a normal dashboard. Step 3. For each segment, it gives you ask a follow up. What does this segment's ideal recovery experience look like if the system gets it wrong? This single question exposes almost every gap because most teams have never designed for being wrong. Step 4. Ask the tool to role play as your most vulnerable segment and describe in first person what the moment of being flagged feels like with zero human involved. This sounds soft, it is not. It is one of the fastest ways to generate real product empathy without needing to run a full research study. First, treat it as a hypothesis generator, then go validate with 2 or 3 real conversations. Step 5. Take everything you've generated and write one sentence. Our system currently optimizes for and is silently underserving. Put that sentence at the top of your next roadmap review. Watch the conversation change. That's it. 5 steps, 30 minutes, no dataset required to start. Here's what I want you to leave with today. Autonomous doesn't mean neutral. Every time you let an agent make a decision that used to involve a human, you're not removing judgment from the system. You're just choosing, often by accident, which segment absorbs the cost of that judgment being wrong. Your job as a product person isn't to make the model more accurate. It's to make sure the people your system fails the hardest are the people you actually chose to underserve, not the people nobody bothered to look for. If this episode gave you one useful reframe, do the 5 step exercise this week and tell me what segment you found that wasn't on your roadmap. I read every message. This has been Product Mastery in the Age of AI and ChatGPT. I'm Madhumita Mantri. Stay curious, stay in the problem a little longer than feels comfortable, and I'll see you next time.